This is Reg. I bought him in a little shop in the town centre the day after my dad died, in memory of him. Dad was a big man in every sense of the word. At 6'1", he towered over me. When I was standing beside him, he would often say to me with a twinkle in his eyes, "Are you standing in a hole?" When I was growing up, I lived in a 1930s terraced house in southeast London. We had a big bay window in the lounge. And when I was very little, my mum would stand me on the windowsill in the bay window so that I could wave to Dad as he cycled off to work. I suppose you could say I was a bit of a daddy's girl. Not that Dad was really a very hands-on sort of dad. He worked long hours and Mum was a stay-at-home mum. That was the pattern really in the 1960s. But there was one evening a month when Dad had responsibility for my brother and me. That was the evening that Mum went out to her ladies' club at the local church. Dad would bathe me and he would wrap me up in a towel. He would sit me on his knee. He would tell me a story and then he'd put me to bed. I loved those evenings. Dad was a carpenter and joiner and he worked at the East Greenwich Gasworks. He loved wood. He also loved collecting old pieces of wood, which drove my mum mad. But he had the ability to turn the most unattractive piece of wood into something beautiful. Might be a bookcase, a cupboard, fire surround, coffee table. Everything was beautiful, with dovetailed joints, French polished, a real thing of beauty. We didn't have a lot of money when I was growing up, so Dad supplemented his income by teaching woodwork at evening class. When we were older, my brother and I sometimes joined him because there was a swimming pool at the college. Dad had an eclectic group of students, including a nun called Sister Paulinus. She wanted to make a lectern for her convent. Unfortunately, her enthusiasm and ambition exceeded her ability, and Dad ended up doing most of the work. Each week he would bring the lectern home to do some more work on it between classes. At the time I was going through a bit of a church phase, so I had great fun playing with this lectern because it was in our dining room. At the end of the term, Sister Paulinus had the most beautiful lectern made out of oak, complete with a gold leaf cross on the front. She was so proud of this lectern that she'd made. When Dad was 40, he was made redundant from the gas works and he went to work in the civil service. This was quite a big thing for Dad, because it's only as I've got older that I realised he wasn't terribly confident. So leaving a job that he'd done for so long and going to work in the civil service really took him out of his comfort zone. He became a clerk of works, and he supervised quite a lot of government buildings in London. The change of job meant that he now became a commuter. And a couple of years later, I joined him on the daily commute, because when I was 11, I passed the 11 plus to go to grammar school, and the school I went to was near London Bridge Station. So every morning, Dad and I did the long walk down to Hither Green Station. Dad drove me mad because we were always late leaving. Normally because Dad was polishing his shoes. He would not leave the house unless his shoes were absolutely gleaming. So we always ended up running the last 100 yards to the station. But I wouldn't change any of that. I got to know my dad so well on those walks down to the station. And because of travelling with him on the train, I felt safe, and I've never felt frightened of train travel. Dad left us a year ago, and I think it's just beginning to sink in that I will never see him again. I'll never hear his voice again. But I have so many memories. According to the Mexican tradition of the Day of the Dead, nobody really dies whilst people still have memories of them. And I have a lot of memories. Coming back to Reg, the guy who made him makes memory bears out of clothing. And not long after Dad died, I contacted him to see if he could make a bear for my mum out of some of Dad's shirts. So there's another Reg belonging to my mum. And then I had 2 more memory bears made, one for my great niece and one for my great nephew. Each one is unique and special and holds memories of a much loved husband, father, grandfather, great-grandfather. So while Reg and his friends are around, my dad will never be forgotten.